The white media's embargo uncovering the success of these three black TV shows proves that they're terrified by what they see, which is history repeating itself, only this time whites don't have a plan B. Whites can't reverse engineer their own versions of black entertainment media the way they did with music. Stories about African Americans simply won't translate to the white experience. They can watch it, but they can never copy it. What closet bigots like Bill Maher will never understand is that the wall of lies they built to excuse away their racist practices isn't real. What's going on right now isn't the second coming of white power. It's their last stand. I want to take a moment to highlight Hollywood's dysfunctional relationship with Asia. We'll start by tearing apart Bill Maher's recitation of the lie about Asians not wanting to buy anything with black people in it. The first example is perhaps the most obvious, Dante Carver, whom a Japanese marketing firm established was the most recognizable person in Japanese commercials. If Asian companies eagerly feature a black man in their ads looking to get Japanese people's money, that settles right there the debate. But let's continue. We'll compare the Asian box office receipts of the recent Karate Kid remake with Will Smith's soon-to-be daughter Jaden and the Asian box office of the Mad Max reboot from last year. The reason I use Karate Kid is because Will Smith did an end run around the white studios and went directly to the Asian markets himself. By the way, I think it's important to note that white critics and reviewers didn't start to attack Will Smith as a has-been until after he did that. Anyway, here's the numbers. Mad Max Fury Road had big stars and an even bigger budget, $150 million. The financials broke down like this. Total worldwide gross for Fury Road, $375 million. On opening weekend, it came in second at the box office with $45 million. The studio allowed it to remain in theater for 133 days before they finally pulled the plug. Pretty good business, right? Not compared to the Karate Kid it wasn't, because that movie only cost $40 million to make, had no big-name stars aside from a cameo by Jackie Chan, and it made almost $360 million worldwide. That's pretty close to what Mad Max made. Unlike Fury Road, however, Karate Kid opened number 1 at the box office at $55 million. Outperforming Charlize and Tom Hardy both in initial box office rank and earnings. However, it was only allowed to stay in theater for 105 days, almost a month less than Mad Max. Looking at the weekly figures for both movies, you get an idea of how the white studios stacked the deck for white-led movies. From opening weekend, Mad Max's earnings dropped pretty damn quick. But the next to last week it was in theaters, you'll notice it has a huge spike in earnings, a whopping 436%. With a jump like that, you're probably wondering what happened. That's the weekend it opened on IMAX screens. But rather than give the film new life, it killed it, because you see that immediately after that stunt, the flick's box office craters a devastating 95%, only getting $17,000 its final weekend. A pathetic $349 per theater. The studio had seen enough. After 19 weeks in release, Mad Max was at the end of the road. Now, compare that with the Karate Kid's performance. By week 14, the movie was still pulling well over $156,000 in a single weekend, well above Mad Max's $122,000 at the same time, and its final weekend was $95,000. A lot better than Mad Max's final weekend of only $17,000. And the Karate Kid never got an IMAX release, by the way. The studios don't do that for black movies. And before anyone tries to say it wasn't making enough money, it was made on a $40 million budget. And while Mad Max had already had 5 weeks of earning way below $100,000 a weekend, Karate Kid had only barely dipped below $100,000 before it got yanked. Now let's look at the individual Asian countries and see who made what in Asia. Although not listed, Karate Kid was released in China and reportedly made 50 million yuan or so, which is about $7 million US. That number was much lower than it should have been, and reading the online reports confirmed my suspicions. The Chinese people and their government are highly sensitive to how they and their people are portrayed in movies. Black people may be used to being disrespected in movies, but the Chinese are not. They have government officials who watch the filming of every single movie made there, especially the foreign ones, and they are very careful not to let some white studios promote the old stereotypes, particularly the ones about Asian women swooning for white men or the ones about Asian men being weak and goofy. And because white studios want into China so badly, they have meekly complied. There's a lesson in that for black people. You don't ask politely for respect, you require that it be given. Clearly, Chinese audiences had no problem with going to see a movie starring a black character, though The Karate Kid may have offended Chinese audiences accidentally by first shooting in modern China but not showing its architectural modernity, and secondly, by being yet another movie where some foreigner knows karate better than the Chinese and beats up all the Asians. Years ago, I did a video about Asian racism against black people, and I highlighted one of the movies Will Smith's Overbrook Entertainment produced, Saving Face. In it, the Chinese mother of one of the Asian characters throws racial insults at a black character in the film. Not able to understand Cantonese, he just smiles. Seems the Chinese aren't as willing to take abuse from black people as Will Smith is to take abuse from them. Chinese go to movies for affirmation, not denigration. Jeremy Larner may think only white people should expect movies to affirm them, but then again, none of his scripts have been turned into movies in 4 decades either. To continue, Karate Kid and Fury Road played in many of the same Asian countries, but Karate Kid outperformed Fury Road in most of those markets. In Malaysia, it made more than double what Fury Road made. Same thing in Singapore, and in Japan it made over 17 million compared to Fury Road's 12. So much for Japan hating movies with black people in it. About the only 2 places where Fury Road outperformed Karate Kid was Hong Kong and South Korea. Karate Kid never opened in those other Asian markets, so Fury Road had them all to itself. But even so, at the end of the day, Karate Kid wasn't merely competitive, it was the clear favorite in Asia. No special effects, no big-name stars. Fury Road, on the other hand, had to spend $150 million, most of it on its 2 leading actors, and the special effects just to make it slightly more profitable than Will Smith's Kid made. Will Smith put in the time to make inroads in Asia before pushing his Kid's movie there, and the white media launched an all-out war on him as a result. I have no sympathy for him, but it does prove they know their talking points are lies, and they're terrified at how easily we could break them down. To understand the importance of cinema as a tool of psychological conquest and control, let's examine how the whites have historically used cinema in Asia. We have to go all the way back to the dawn of movies to see this one clearly. This is an excerpt from Silver Screen Magazine, one of the earliest movie trade publications for general consumption by moviegoers. In its May 1937 issue, it wrote, "To put it plainly, the movies unquestionably are the single greatest force for change in human society today, and in this country, that change is, on the whole, a constructive one." They had the nerve to write this at a time when Hollywood was showing black people as buffoons and servants. 2 years before Hattie McDaniel got an Oscar for playing a slave mammy. But the point is, the writer confirms that those who ran the movie industry knew that movies were the most powerful tool of social engineering ever devised. And although we had a problem with how they portrayed us, the people who ran Hollywood see this as the best of all possible worlds. But let's go back even earlier than that and see what whites in the movie business were saying to one another. This is Screenland Magazine. It was established in 1920 as one of the first inside industry publications. It was not made for movie-going audiences, however. It was made for the movie industry professionals, so these people could communicate with one another more honestly. So, what did they talk about? Let's look at the December 1922 issue. We find an article by L.G. Blochman. He wrote a piece called Movies in Malaysia, with the caption reading, "The movies are threatening the superiority and prestige of the white man in Asia." Perhaps that is why Singapore is exercised to check the rising tide of color. Please pay special attention to the quotes I give next, because these are coming from white men talking about what they know to be the role and impact of movies at the very beginning of the film industry. Quote, "The uneducated natives see episodes on screen in which Occidentals, whom he is taught to regard as the last word in human perfection, commit larceny, murder, etc." Let me repeat that because I'm pretty sure you missed it. Blochman says clearly that the Malays had to be taught that the Occidentals, that means whites, are perfect. And we all know what the primary tool of that indoctrination has proven to be. To continue, Blochman gets to his point, saying, "This strict supervision of the film's portrayal of women is ostensibly for the benefit and protection of white women living in the colony. If the native sees a white woman mistreated on the screen, he will lose respect for the species and be tempted to follow suit," says the censor, who at that time were white government officials from Britain. Take note of what they said. They know that movies can be used to indoctrinate people to respect or disrespect certain groups. Blochman then goes on to write, "The real motive, I believe, which lies behind not only in this particular point of censorship, but the entire system, is the protection of the idea which the British consider the keystone of their empire in the East, the superiority and prestige of the white man." So, even good white people at the dawn of the 20th century recognized that the British were using movies to indoctrinate and meticulously ensured that whatever was on the screen taught the lesson that non-whites exist solely to serve whites. Next, Blochman quotes a European banker in Shanghai who said, "In Asia, the white man must be looked up to like a god, otherwise it will be spoiled for us." There you have it in black and white from a banker. Blochman then goes on to cite the banning of a movie called Broken Blossoms, asking, why did a young tempest, that means riot, break loose among the whites after it was shown in India? Was it because the film portrayed a superior Oriental in contrast with the low strata of Occidental life, white trash? As I told you before, white people do not want to see images of other white people down and out. Finally, Blochman closes by saying, "The answer to this question will also serve as an answer to the Singapore censor's practice of deleting all scenes of strikes, revolutions, and other protests against established authority and existing social order." The key word there is existing, maintaining the status quo. White supremacy in a nutshell. So there you have it. White people from the very dawn of cinema admitting it's all about social control through images. So now it's not just a movie. Never has been. Look, the Asians are hardly our friends, but we've done ourselves no favors by sitting back and letting this go on. Other peoples regard us as lazy mopes who aren't smart enough to do the hard work necessary to command respect. We keep looking around at each other hoping someone else will do it so we don't have to. The most powerful tool of social control has been the media, and movies are an integral part of that. The white media is terrified, not of Jada Pinkett Smith or her husband, but of the issue that they've raised, and of the rank and file like you and me who might decide to act on it. People who don't want a better place in the white movie plantation, rather who want to burn the white studio plantation to the ground and build a stronghold of black empowerment in its place. We can run the tables on them worldwide, and they know it. It's a numbers game, and the math works against them. We don't have to beat them outright. All we have to do is outlast them. But that requires that we get into the game. They are the gatekeepers of media. But we need to be honest with ourselves. The only reason that they're still standing in front of the gates is because we've been too lazy to build our own media machine and knock them aside. I told you in early 2015, our culture is the most vibrant and most imitated on the planet. And when it comes to intellectual property, that is the most powerful element of all. But it's not enough to merely be vibrant and imitated. We need to get off our butts and to intelligently use our culture as financial and creative ammunition to create our own media, to penetrate markets aggressively and dominate them. Yes, I said take other people's markets over. In an ideal world, when you go to Britain, Idris Elba and David Oyelowo would be the most powerful men in UK cinema, not merely as actors, but as shot callers. They would decide what films get greenlit, which films don't, and who gets whitelisted for running their mouths. The movie industry tells tons of lies about itself. My personal favorite is, it's not about black and white, it's about green. You are a naive moron if you think the guys in Hollywood are in it for the money. They don't see themselves as being in the business of entertainment. They see themselves as being in the business of mind control. And when you see how Hollywood has come to influence the world, you see that they're right. So while attention is focused on this conversation, let's make sure we keep it on track. The goal is not to get more votes on the Academy, because we should not be fighting for the privilege of maintaining the house that D.W. Griffith built. The target isn't the Oscars, and should not be the white movie studios either. The target we should be trying to reach and influence are black audiences. Get them to practice financial discipline with their dollars. We need a cinema worthy of us, one that reflects our value system. No coonery, no buffoonery, no petty relationship drama, and no black people needing white people for advice, support, and damn sure not as a love interest. In other words, no more garbage that teaches us to embrace being dysfunctional. It will take a lot of time for black people to reacquire a taste for meaningful portrayals of ourselves, to acquire a taste for empowerment, to relearn that our image is ours and must be protected vehemently. It will be challenging for those who have conditioned themselves to want to be made to laugh all the time, or who can only get enthused about a story when they see people chasing sex and ego trips because they're too shallow and stupid to chase wealth and influence. But these aren't the people I'm wanting to reach anyway. There's more than enough black people with their heads on straight who have been waiting for a group of intelligent black people to turn this thing around. So why don't we get to it? It was 20 years ago that the last talk of an Oscar boycott took place, and nothing ever came of that discussion. So unless we want to still be sitting here 20 years from now, still discussing whether we should boycott, we better stop looking to Hollywood for anything and start looking to ourselves.